from the air conditioner as he passed through the sleepy towns of Fillmore and Piru. At the Saugus Junction, he turned north on Interstate 5, and now he was heading toward Gorman. Fisher called this section of the interstate the Ridge Road. It rose sharply from Saugus to an elevation of more than 4,000 feet, and there it continued on toward Bakersfield. Fortunately for him, Fisher was not headed that far. All he had to do was drive part way up the Ridge Road, where he was to pull off and wait at a designated wide spot in the frontage road. There, at 8:30, he was to meet a park ranger, get into her truck, and scout out possible bee sites. The ranger, a pretty, well-spoken woman named Lynn, arrived, and Fisher proceeded north on the interstate in her truck. They were in what was called Lower Chaparral country, an area of small, low-lying scrub oaks, greasewood, and manzanita, a chaparral plant with distinctive red bark and a lovely grayish leaf. This was not forest. On the contrary, it looked more like desert than anything else. At the Hungry Valley exit, they turned off, continuing north on a frontage road, then east into a narrow canyon on a poorly maintained dirt road called, on some older maps, Caswell Canyon Road. A quarter-mile east of the frontage road, it abruptly ended. It was 10:30 when the ranger stopped the truck and Fisher jumped out. "This looks very good," he said. All he could hear was the faint hum of freight trucks rumbling along the interstate. Stepping out of the truck, Lynn said she thought it would be perfect for the bees, and of the half-dozen sites Fisher had looked at on the topographical map, this one was not used by any other beekeepers. "You'll be alone here," Lynn said. With its steep, washed-out sides, the narrow pass where the road ended was like a box canyon. There appeared to be only one way into the canyon, and Fisher could not imagine anyone else following the same road to this exact spot. He figured his bees would be safe here. "I really think this is perfect," Fisher said, wiping the sweat off his forehead with a handkerchief. But as he headed away from the truck, his feet crunched on something, and he noticed a number of broken beer bottles and smashed cans. Stepping back, he saw piles of spent bullet casings littering the ground. "Looks like someone's idea of a target range," he said, kicking at one of the shells with the point of his boot. It seemed like a long way to go just to fire off a gun. The ranger said she agreed, noting that target shooters had trampled through a lot of the valleys in the area. She said she wanted to see if she could go further up into the canyon, and she turned and moved away from the truck. As she left him, Fisher began walking back down along the edge of the road, toward a narrow, rocky gully. What he was looking for was a flat, open area of perhaps a half-acre in size. He was about 100 yards from the truck when he smelled something truly horrible. "Something's dead," he thought. This alarmed him not because he was afraid of coming across a dead animal, but because he needed to be certain there was nothing living in this canyon that would upset his hives, like a bear, for instance. "Jesus, it really smells," he thought, thinking maybe a cow had wandered into the box canyon and been eaten by coyotes. He walked in 15 or 20 feet, toward the far side of the dry wash, and when he came around a greasewood bush, he saw a hand sticking up toward the sky, with 2 fingers extended and partially separated in the manner of a 60s peace sign. The flesh was yellow, the color of skin stained by nicotine. Momentarily stunned, he stood and stared. It was clearly a human hand. There was no getting around that. He slowly approached the hand, and as he got closer, he could see it was attached to some blue cloth. He could make out legs, or rather the shape of legs under more blue cloth, and the other arm and a portion of the top of a head with a shock of brownish hair. He stopped again, staring at the ground in front of him. Fisher stood trying to answer all the questions popping into his head. He did not know whose body he was looking at, but he was certain it did not belong here. This was no hiker who fell off a cliff, he thought, or a hunter who had somehow shot himself. The blue cloth, a suit perhaps, seemed to indicate that these fetid remains were those of a businessman. The rank odor indicated they had been here a long time, baking in the sun, picked at by predators. It seemed, upon closer inspection, that only a fraction of the original body was still there, and the rest had melted away into the earth.